Hey, what's up everyone? Ragey Golden Eagle here, having way too much fun as always. And today I'd like to go into a topic that I mention constantly in other videos and streams, but I think it's deserving of its own unique, focused attention. And what I'm talking about is the concept of outrage marketing and why I'm kind of surprised we don't see more of it. Cause seriously, this entire concept goes back years, not decades, hell, possibly even centuries if you look back far enough. I mean, damn, I can't be the only one that remembers like back in the 90s how video game companies were purposely triggering the moral authoritarian busybodies. Back then, you had groups of these busybodies under the guise of concerned parents fighting to remove pretty much anything fun out of all forms of entertainment. So to capitalize on that and to prove how cool and edgy they were, various video game companies and other entertainment companies as well were capitalizing on that. Their ad campaigns were specifically going out of their way to trigger the censors and the moral authoritarians, and while they were doing that, they won the support of the youth and pretty much everybody who was sick and tired of the censors and the moral authoritarians. But the climate is a little bit different nowadays. The industry itself seems to be firmly in the pockets of the moral authoritarians and the censors. They are more than happy to preemptively censor themselves even before there's any outrage. Which again seems kind of odd to me given even recent examples of why you shouldn't do this. Stepping outside of entertainment, we had in the UK that example with Protein World. They went and launched that famous Are You Beachbody Ready ad campaign with that good-looking supermodel and got a whole bunch of NPCs triggered, and they responded by not giving a shit and just doubling down, and last I heard, that stunt made them millions. And then in the video game arena, you had Kingdom Come Deliverance. Warhorse Studios as well did not apologize, didn't back down, and they made more money than they probably would have without all the free advertising they got from all the spurgouts. And now you're seeing it again with Comicsgate. Comicsgate creators are actively using triggered NPCs to sell comics and advertise them, and because of this, they're reaching a much wider audience than they otherwise would have. Ethan Van Sciver and crew are right. Before Comicsgate came along, look at how little money your average successful comic book crowdfunding campaign made. It was like what, $6,000, $8,000 tops? Well, outside of a few very big names anyway. And yet, thanks to Comicsgate, you had relative newcomer Richard C. Meyer make over $300,000. Regardless of the quality of his comic, he would not have been able to do that on his own if he wasn't using the outraged NPCs to his advantage. And while we're talking about this, let's look at another form of media, anime. Look at Goblin Slayer. Look at the spurgouts we've been seeing about the one rape scene in the first episode. Oh my god, it's the worst thing ever. How dare you use rape as a plot device? Says a lot of the same people that enjoyed Game of Thrones. And everyone involved responded correctly there as well. I don't think anyone was adding fuel to the fire, but everyone was just ignoring the outrage. About the only change is now there's a warning at the beginning of every episode, but boo-hoo, big deal. We see that on quite a few anime already, it doesn't really matter. And besides, in this specific case, Crunchyroll originally did have it rated as E for everybody, so they really did screw up. But anyway, what's the result of all these spurgouts on the final popularity of Goblin Slayer? Well, last I checked, it was the #1 show in both the US and Australia. Actually, I think it was the #1 show all over the US in pretty much every state. I don't think that's ever happened before. And I'm quite sure Goblin Slayer would have been popular anyway because of how good it is, but I doubt it would have been that popular if not for all the free advertising. So given all these successful examples, there really is a simple 4-step process to making a lot of money. And here it is. Step 1. Trigger a bunch of NPCs. Step 2. Use that triggering for free advertising all around the globe. Step 3, and this one's the most important, do not apologize. Either ignore the spurgouts or just keep rubbing salt in the wound for more free advertising until they get sick of crying about you. And finally, step 4, profit from all the extra sales and attention you get thanks to them acting as your free marketing department. You don't need to be Hollywood and spend millions of dollars on marketing. All you gotta do is trigger people, and they're gonna market it for you. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of the average ignorant normie. They're gonna hear about this most horrible thing ever, Goblin Slayer, right? And quite a few of them are gonna think, oh my god, this sounds bad, I need to see this for myself. And then they're gonna watch it and realize it's freaking awesome and you made yourself a new fan. Even if a few of these people that come to watch it hate it, it doesn't matter because they would never have been fans anyway. If they heard about you or your products through Outrage and decided they didn't like it anyway, then you don't lose anything. These are people who wouldn't have heard about you either way. You only stand to gain. There's no downside here. So it's because of this in particular that it's so surprising to me that a lot of companies get through most of this list but screw it up on the second to last step. They actually go and apologize, which is literally the worst thing you could do when you have a triggered mob of NPCs. Because let's face it, not only are they not your customers anyway, but they're not going to accept your apology anyway. They're always going to nitpick it. Your apology is never going to go far enough. And by apologizing, you're also going to be alienating your actual fan base that specifically want you to ignore these triggered NPCs. By apologizing, you only stand to lose. You gain nothing. I mean, hell, look at what happened to CD Projekt Red's community manager. A bunch of triggered NPCs dogpiled him, he apologized, and then he got fired anyway. Lot of good apologizing did there, huh? And finally, if you really think about it, look at the state of modern-day quote-unquote journalism. Just look at it. It's not news, it's sensationalist clickbait. All modern quote-unquote journalism, especially game journalism, really is just one big clickbait triggering contest. How much outrage can we stir up to get those sweet, sweet drama clicks on our articles? Because if we don't, our site's gonna fail because we don't have anyone with actual talent employed here and no one's gonna visit us otherwise. That's pretty much what they are. They don't report the news, they stir up drama. And they're never going to give you a fair shake anyway. So instead of letting these parasites destroy you by nitpicking everything you do and causing you to remove things from your product and censor stuff and change everything and apologize, which again only ends up alienating your existing fan base and gets you nobody, why not actually make them useful? Why not use them for free marketing? Why not trigger them on purpose and make bank like we're seeing in Comicsgate? Let me ask you guys this again. Do you think diversity in comics would have been nearly as big with his Jawbreakers comic if not for all the outrage from the NPCs? Whether or not this business model is sustainable in any way, we have yet to see. But even as just a one-off, you gotta admit that is quite the impressive show. So let me reiterate again, whatever you do, do not apologize. Even if you have some alleged principles and don't want to use outrage marketing to promote your product, apologizing is the worst thing you can do, as I just mentioned. So if you don't want to keep prodding them to get more free advertising, just ignore them. You guys have any idea how many of these online outrages I've been through? They don't last very long for the most part. The puppet masters of these NPCs tell them to get mad at something, they get mad at it, they raise a stink about it for a few days, maybe even a few weeks if they're really dedicated, and then they move on to something else to be mad about and they completely forget you even existed. So if you find yourself on the receiving end of some NPC outrage and for whatever reason you don't want to use it to your advantage, just ignore them, don't even respond. Don't rub salt in the wound, don't apologize, don't even acknowledge their existence. If this is one of the usual NPC outrage mobs, they'll be gone before you know it. Now, if they're still around a few months later, you may have a real problem on your hands. But really, why would you destroy your entire company and your reputation before you know there is actually a real problem? What was it that Jeff Foxworthy said? Like when you're being interrogated by the cops, just short yes or no answers? Don't volunteer any more information than you need to because you don't want to end up confessing to something they don't know about yet. And it's the same thing when it comes to NPC outrage mobs. Until you are sure you have an actual problem on your hands and it's just not another passing faux outrage, don't do anything that'll have a long-term negative impact on you. Don't drive your own customers away. Now, if it's your own customers that are outraged at what you're doing, that's an entirely different matter for a different video. And something that Sony is going to learn the hard way when the PS5 flops. But that aside, seriously, especially if you are relatively unknown, consider using outrage marketing to get your name out there. There are very few, if any, downsides, and you only stand to gain. And that's all I gotta say, guys. Thanks for listening.